All right, great. Well, today was kind of promised something about looking into the faculties of consciousness in Savitri. So the idea was that we will use our Sunday Sangha for the studies of integral yoga. This will be our kind of integral yoga forum community coming. So everyone will present something which was interesting for them. For a while, I will be, maybe this is one time I will be speaking about faculties in Savitri. It was my research for some years. And then next time we will move towards the um, letters on yoga. Yeah, letters on yoga will be our major focus, and there we will find all our answers. We will take them topic by topic. It would be interesting, I guess. You
But if
agree
you
with
can
this?
make sure that you're recording too, I keep getting a message that the disk is full, so I'm a little concerned.
Oh, okay, okay. I'm recording. All right. So then, without further ado, I will jump into the topic, and then we will discuss. So first of all, I wanted to say that uh, how I arrived at this idea of looking into the faculties of consciousness in Sri Aurobindo Savitri for two reasons. First, I discovered that Upanishads are dealing with consciousness in a totally different fashion, more like through the faculties, more than directly as consciousness, as we are talking about it in the psychological setting nowadays. Everybody speaks about consciousness as if they know what it is. So everybody knows what it is somehow because we are aware of ourselves and the world to a certain extent, and that awareness we call consciousness. Yeah? But that is a very vague definition, so to say. Consciousness is much more concrete, and the Upanishads are dealing with this consciousness in a concrete manner. They don't speak about consciousness altogether. They speak about seeing, hearing, speaking, thinking, feeling, and being in the body. These six major faculties. And I was surprised to see that throughout all of the Upanishads, they speak about these six. And later, Sankhya forms them into the senses after in the post-Vedic, post-Vedantic period. And we have five senses which are dominated by the mind. Manas. Manas becomes sixth sense. It is the one who synthesizes all the inputs of the senses, and senses are viewed, indriyas are viewed only as those turned without, turned outside. They bring the inputs, the impulses from outside to the mind, and mind decides what to do with them, onto what to concentrate, what to take into account, what not to notice, and so on. As Yajnavalkya would say, it is not by the ear that you hear, but by the mind. It is not by the eye that you see, but by the mind. So mind is that focal capacity or faculty of consciousness to focus it on any object of sense or any image of things. So we select what to hear, what to speak, what to think, what to remember. Selective memory, we all know. Yes, I remember from that event only that thing. The other person remembers totally different thing. So, and here we have all the arguments because our mind was there on that particular thing. And yes, Joyce.
Vladimir, sorry to interrupt, but I read yesterday that Sri Aurobindo says that even our thoughts come from outside. They're not generated from inside unless some impression stays in the subconscious. And that might form as a thought, but generally our thoughts come from outside and we have the power to reject them. In the
Right.
letters on yoga.
Well, yes. What is thought? We have to look into it. Yes. Again, we will look into all these topics in this today. What is thought? Thought is some kind of formation or focusing of consciousness by someone on some object of sense, which generated so that kind of focal energy point, which started to live by itself, so to say. And in that reservoir of thoughts, of that akashic place, everything which was experienced once, as Sri Aurobindo says, has the right to be forever. And these are thoughts, these are impressions, these are chitta's activities or experiences, which we have in terms of thoughts, impressions, and so on. And they live. Everything, this world, this universe is full of those imprints, yeah, of our activities. And these imprints come to us as thoughts, trouble us, or enter into our kind of consciousness because they are um, we attract them to a certain extent. We like them, or they like us. They feel affinity with our vibration, and they come to us. So we attract what we are, truly speaking, or what we want to experience. Yeah? And then we think, oh, it is me, my desire, my thought. But not all thoughts are coming from outside. Some are also rising from the heart, as Sri Aurobindo says, and others are also being generated by us. So, but mainly, yes. Mainly, if you take an average person, it is like we are in the fish in the water, and that water is going through us. We go through water, and that water is full of thoughts, impressions, and so on and so forth, reactions, dogmas, cultural imprints, what we heard, what we saw on TV, what we liked, what we disliked from outside. Everything is forming that what our personality. But back to the faculties. So I kind of on that ground, I understood that consciousness is much more concrete. And Sri Aurobindo in the Kana gives us a very good exposition of this. He says that Brahman is actually a thought of our thought, seeing of our seeing, hearing of our hearing, life of our life. Yeah. So there is some depth of the indriyas. The indriyas are not only turned outside, senses are not turned outside, they are turned also within. And they have their inner realms or inner life, as it were. So, and then they can go so deep within that then reach the surface, the core of consciousness, or the inner core of the very consciousness. So the very consciousness operates by these indriyas, or these faculties. Let us say faculties, because indriyas are mainly misunderstood. They are understood as senses turned outside and operated by the mind, which is the major case for an ordinary person. But it's not so, because the seeing is not seen by the eye. Seeing is the faculty of consciousness. Eye is built as an instrument in the physical body to operate in the physical world and to bring that faculty of consciousness, seeing, which is not the eye, through the eye to the physical world. The same with the ear. Ear is a very complex instrument, but hearing is not ear. If I will be deaf and blind, I will still see and hear. Yeah? Because my operations within the physical world are not the whole set of things. It is also inner worlds. It is in the inner worlds that I hear and see and think and speak and feel. And mainly we live inside. We hardly live outside. Outside we only make our correspondence with the reality certain. Maybe 10% we live outside. Mainly we ponder about things inside. Is it not so? It's hardly, we are hardly outside. That's why Zoom is good for us. That's why movies are fine for us. TV is good. Everything is good. Books, because we live inside. We read, we imagine, we feel inside, not outside. It's very rarely we feel outside. Oh, it's hot. That's how we feel outside. But inside, all kinds of feelings, all kinds of impressions, thoughts, imaginations. We have very rich life inside. And that inside has depth. So then I thought I will come to Savitri and learn from Savitri, since I know that Sri Aurobindo took the whole vision of the Veda and applied it to Savitri, especially this archetypal way of thinking, like day and night. Yeah, he starts with the night. What is night, actually? It is seeing, yes? That means night, there is no light. We see no light. So that means there is already seeing implied. It cannot be, we cannot speak about the reality without implying the faculties. We simply cannot. We either see or feel or touch, or we always operate by faculties. So I will project some of my I will just give you a taste of how it is in Savitri, and then we will jump more into the studies of the word. And anytime you have some question or something, or you want to add something, please do it without... We have a few more people with us, Brian and Soumya. If you can show your faces, would be also nice. At least we would know who you are. Okay, great. Because talking to the black screen with the name is a bit different. We do not see the reaction. We do not know what is going on. And since we are a very intimate group, so to say, closely related, and we are going to study the yoga, integral yoga, so we need to be in the communion, if you don't mind, of course. So, projection of this faculties. I had some quotations here, how Sri Aurobindo deals with faculties, how it's quite interesting, but I will not go to it. I go straight to Savitri because of lack of time. Let us look into just some passages from Savitri. What I did, I colored them. So the red will be mainly mind and seeing. Hearing and word would be always blue. And green, there will be something of the touch or the embodiment or the being which is embodied or the soul, living being. Yeah. So here we are. So we have three major accesses to reality: seeing, hearing, and touch. And interestingly enough, touch is located between seeing and hearing, so to say. Seeing is more apprehensive cognition, or hearing is more comprehensive understanding of what we see, the form and the name, and the touch will be something which will have both of them, which will embody seeing and hearing. So that's why we can touch. We touch, first of all, we feel the entity, the being, and at the same time we feel the attitude, through the touch. The attitude, we understand what this touch brings us. Either it is caressing touch, or it is harsh touch, pushing away, or it is an angry touch. So we read the touch, the meaning of the touch, through comprehension. And at the same time, we feel it as the being. That means apprehensive. Apprehensive and comprehensive are within the touch, both. So it's quite interesting because these two, hearing and seeing, are necessary to give us the embodiment. And as it is projected in the Upanishads, it is by nama and rupa, nama, name, and rupa, form, that Brahman could embody itself in the world. The spirit could be embodied through name and form, or through comprehensive and apprehensive cognition, or through seeing and hearing. These seeing and hearing are two fundamental faculties which give us both the form, the power, form, self, being, and on the other, Atman, and on the other hand, Brahman, spirit, comprehension, name, understanding, meaning, relations, everything what that may bring, that form may bring in relation to other forms and beings. So these two build up the whole embodiment of the spirit. It is because of these two, nama and rupa, or the seeing and hearing, that Brahman, spirit, could be embodied in matter, could become matter, material embodiment, and generate itself as touch, as separate entity. So here we are. His center was no more in earthly mind. We are reading from Ashwapati's yoga. A power of seeing silence filled his limbs. Now, when I read this in my way, seeing silence, I can see two faculties in one: seeing and hearing. Seeing silence. It's amazing. So silence means that there is no sound, no expression of any kind. It is all embracing comprehensive presence, but it is also viewing, seeing. So it is silence which is seeing. Seeing is an adjective to it. Silence, comprehension is with the faculty of recognition of the being.
I have a quick question, Vladimir, about silence.
Yes.
Can the word silence also refer to that which is beyond all the faculties, the Satpurusha, the pure self, mutable self?
Yeah, silence is the comprehensive, it's a consciousness action, action of consciousness, yes? Seeing is also action of consciousness. They are both the faculties of consciousness. And without consciousness, there will be neither silence nor seeing. It's not possible. So the self is something else, the being. So it is what we perceive, how we perceive the being. Yes? We perceive or cognize the being through consciousness in different ways, like through seeing or through hearing or through beingness, touch, feeling, emotion. So we have these three, and they're quite amazing. We will come more and more to it. There's the whole but I do not know how to communicate with you in a way that I would maintain myself and my own kind of comprehension and being with you, because it's not the form of knowledge which can be delivered by quotations. It's not the form of mental knowledge. It is some kind of understanding. It's an understanding which we have to arrive at. Okay? I know
Vladimir,
it's
if I can maybe just add something too, not quite related, but to this passage, seeing silence. So when you read that, what I immediately saw and recalled was oftentimes when in meditation and you experience this like a vast stillness, right, which I would call silence, you actually, or I actually see the vast stillness, and I hear the vast silence or stillness, and you sense it, right? You also sense or feel it. So there's also this third sense that can be equated to seeing silence, at least when I experience it. Does that make sense?
yeah.
There's
I
another
have to find
example.
my ground back to myself because I lost it. I have to come back.
Vladimir,
Calling back for help. This is a very tricky ground, yes, because we are moving into the very faculties of consciousness which are far beyond the senses or the physical world. Yeah.
Right, these are the inner senses. These include
Yes.
the inner senses, right? I think Gita Shri wants to say something.
Yes, Gita.
Vladimir, there's another experience of silence which I had. It's also when you're in the middle of the ocean, right? Like 2, 3 miles into the ocean. Either you're going to watch whales and there is utter silence, total silence. Then you're like seeing the silence, you're feeling the silence. Or when you're parasailing over the ocean, which I've done, and from that height, you're seeing the silence of the ocean. And I mean, it's like pin drop silence, that vastness,
Mm. Vastness, silence, yes, depth, purity. This I was trying to define silence. Can you define silence in by what it could be, even in physical terms? What is silence? Silence is loud silence. Can it be loud silence? What is this white noise? You know this term, yes? The earphones, they have white noise if you put them.
it's a presence. I feel it as a presence that envelopes completely and enters you.
It's a presence, yeah, which envelopes you. It is some kind of vibrations which are overlapping, let us speak technologically, which are kind of fulfilling each other to the extent that they are overlapping, and they are hushing each other to the extent that you have all of them potentially present or even kinetically present, but none of them is standing out. Dawn is ready to say it's good.
I'm trying to pause in silence before speaking. Let me try one more because I think Sri Aurobindo gives the answer right here on screen. So yes, when Radhe speaks of that vast, limitless, boundless silence that you're aware of, and Gita Shri is speaking of the silence, the ocean that there's an awareness of, you're speaking of vibrations and presence. Yes, that for me is, I gave an exercise a few weeks ago of noticing the stillness between sound, and you feel this like expectancy. It's alive, it's dynamic. But when Sri Aurobindo says his soul sailed beyond thought, the superconscient mind screens no more the shoreless infinite, it's a motionless peace, the word is mute, there came not form nor any mounting voice there was only silence and the absolute. Here he's not talking about silence to me. You're aware of, I'm going to put it philosophically incorrect, so forgive me, but rather than I'm aware of silence, I am the silence. I become the silence. I recognize I've always been that openness, that silence, it's indescribable. So to me, to sum up, when you're speaking of the silence and sound as in the faculties, that to me is the chit shakti. It's whatever. But when you're talking about the absolute silence, this is beyond what we think of as being. It's beyond anything the mind can conceive. You can only point to it because anything I say about it's going to be wrong. But it's this complete, total dissolution of any sense of me as a separate anything. That's my understanding.
And maybe that's the difference, Don, between what you read with the capital S of silence and what's up above, a power of seeing silence, not capital S for silence. One is you are it, and one is you're observing or witnessing or experiencing it. But we're probably taking you far off, Vladimir, so maybe we should just kind of let you do your thing for a little bit and get into your groove and see things how you were seeing them and then comment.
My task was kind of more simplistic and more concrete than yours. You're going immediately into your own kind of deriving. My task was more to take a position of the witness and to look into Sri Aurobindo's text, not from the subjective identification with it and going into the experience, but to view it how he uses what presumptions are there, or presuppositions rather, in his choice of the words, why he uses these or those faculties and how he uses. From him I learned what is hearing, what is speaking, what is word, what is mind, what mind can do. From him, from Savitri, I learned. I know that mind is always seeing and hardly ever hearing, yes? And if it is hearing, there will be always a very specific way of using it. Like in this case, it's a very special case, seeing silence. That's why I stopped at it. It's a very unique expression, very rare in Savitri, seeing silence. It's contradictory in a way. It's apprehensive comprehension. Doesn't really appear. It's a complete, and it is a power. This power of completeness filled his limbs. That's what it tells me. So you see, I'm kind of working with it a bit technologically, more than just psychologically only. So you can see that vision that surpasses forms immediately, vision and forms, and living that surpasses life. You see, I put it green color because this is life itself, touch, feeling, for me. The voice that only by speech can move the mind. The mind has to be red here and not the blue. Mind and seeing. So thinking and seeing on one side, and because it's always apprehensive, seeing and concentrating on the object of sense, and hearing and speaking. Speaking are always, and hearing comprehensive. Thought, became a silent knowledge in the soul. So very interestingly, wisdom, knowledge are always connected to comprehension and to the word. The word that knows. The word always brings wisdom, comprehension. Comprehension is knowledge. Knowledge is never seen. it's something really to learn from. We are here learning about our faculties. Yeah? Knowledge cannot be seen, and here we are. Maybe it's something new for you, I will be telling you, because here I had a big discussion with Devashish, who disagreed with me totally on this, that knowledge cannot be seen. But you see, seeing silence, if seeing silence can be there, that means it's nearly supramental knowledge. Yeah? Because silence belongs to this comprehension or all-inclusive presence of the spirit, of the being, which is seeing, which is apprehending all the bits and pieces within itself, yeah? Within its infinity. So basically, if we start analyzing it, even with our mind, but knowing how faculties work, we gain a lot of interesting insight and knowledge. Yes, I will take few more things here, and then I will jump into the word, if I will have still time for that. Thought lay down in a mighty voicelessness, also interesting. Voicelessness is this word, hearing, this presence of the comprehension, and thought lay down in that mighty comprehensive oneness. A toiling thinker widened and grew still. Toiling thinker, that who constantly concentrating on any object of sense widened and grew still. So there was nothing for him to focus on anymore. His focus became vast and grew still. Still, again, it's the word which has to be blue. Maybe not. Wisdom transcendent touched his quivering heart. Heart, wisdom, word. It reminds us also of the mythical structure of consciousness in Gapser, where he says, with the opening of the heart, the word, the myth, the word comes into being. So, and then luminous bar, you can see the choice of the words. Thoughts, luminous bar, mind screened no more the shoreless infinite. The shoreless infinite is always screened by the mind. It is restricted by the mind. Mind shapes the infinite, shoreless infinite, into some shapes and forms. So this is something... Yes, here also is a beautiful, comprehensive, a seeing thought, a self-revealing voice. These are the insights which we can get from seeing thought. Thought is always seeing, and voice is always revealing self. It is communicating, it is self-expression, expression of the deeper self. Something is written here, Dawn. Yeah, knowledge by identity. Knowledge, wisdom, but it comes with comprehension. It's interesting. Not with apprehension. And in that sense, if you look at Sankhya, we see that hearing is first, touch is next, and seeing is third. So it's quite interesting to see that the seeing of the formation, requires three-dimensional already formulation of the self-expression of being. So that self-expression, word, hearing, comprehension has to precede any form. So the form is made out of the comprehension of consciousness, of the being. It is in this involutionary scale, but in the evolutionary scale, it's just the opposite. We look at the form first, and then we try to figure out what it means. Yeah? So we arrive at comprehension from the form. But in the formation, in the formulation, or in the creating movement, in creative movement of consciousness, it's just the opposite. So now I will jump, and there are many more things here. Mind leaned out, shapes and hues, this is mind. Hearing was a stream of magic audience. Stream, also interesting. Stream, water, hearing, comprehension would be one of those. Voice, the voice came of a truth. Truth, voice, always connected in one way, and so on. So now I am jumping straight to my presentation on the word. I have many things here, this Word document. Not this one, I have several of them. This one. I have my notes for each of these passages, which I would like to discuss with you and see how it works out for you. I take only one faculty of the word. Maybe it's also useful because in our course on spirit and matter, I will be presenting the word, so it will have some association. Okay, let's start from the beginning then.
Do you want to show a different document, Vladimir, or are you still on this one with Savitri?
Oh, so sorry. But please interrupt me because I can be carried away, and the subject is very profound, deep, and difficult for me to speak. It's easier for me to think about it than to speak about it to you, because I am tuned to you and I feel all the doubts, all the movements of your own. And they are really like, I'm like that boat on the stormy waters in the sea. And I have to keep up with my, kind of, and I need your feedback. I need your response. If it is not happening, it's no use to speak about it at all. So, for even her gulfs were secrecies of light. At once she was the stillness and the word, a continent of self-diffusing peace, an ocean of untrembling virgin fire. Here we have the description of Savitri, the Divine Mother, the embodiment of the Word. She is the incarnate Word, the beautiful body of incarnate Word. So she, Savitri, is the daughter of the sun, the Word. Yeah? She was the stillness and the Word at the same time. Stillness is something interesting. Stillness is not silence, notice. The difference is very subtle. Stillness has something to do with the body and movement, whereas silence with the comprehension and communication. Though they are very close in English, but they are still having some slight difference. Stillness has something to do with, okay, I will leave it. Stillness has to do with the self, and silence with the comprehension, with the word, with hearing.
Stillness is more physical?
Stillness is physical also. Yes, also physical.
So I wonder if this wonder if this relates to what you're saying. This may sound more experiential, but there's a Tibetan Buddhist teacher, contemporary, Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, who very frequently uses the words stillness, spaciousness, and silence for his students. And he relates stillness to he said a quick doorway to that is the stillness of the body. And silence he relates to hearing, and spaciousness to seeing. And all three of those together point back to, in Buddhism, it's the Dharmakaya, but it would be the self. And that's going to.
Super. Thank you, Don. This is super. Because it actually covers these three major faculties of touch, hearing, and seeing. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was looking for how to express the stillness because I just didn't think about it before. But it is this touch. There is no more touch in that sense. The touch is everywhere. It's stillness.
And I think what Gita Sri said, and I think Rade too, if you're out on the ocean, I know here in Asheville we have a lot of these beautiful high mountain roads that go up so high. You get out of the car and it's still, silent, and spacious. You can hear the silence. It's so powerful. And I think what happens is, you start to see the air becomes alive, but it's not moving. It's like this, the mind can't understand this. You're seeing the stillness. It's so palpable. But when your body is very still, you really stop. You get out of the car, you stop, or you're on the boat, in the ocean, and you stop. And you feel your body so still. And there's a sense of beingness, just stillness pervading. And it's so far beyond words because it's still and silent and spacious. And what does that mean? And the mind just blows up.
Yeah, the stillness is has because it is touch. It has two elements of it. Is the self. The self becomes still, the being, and also the comprehension is stilled or silenced. So both of them, and in that word holds both, seeing and hearing. It as touch holds both. So I want to take a few more passages which are maybe more here. Silent and listening in the silent heart. Interesting. Yeah? Silent and listening in the silent heart. For the coming of the new and the unknown. He gazed across the empty stillnesses. You see, stillness and gazing, seeing, here they are, self, being, and heard the footsteps of the undreamed idea. Interestingly, idea is something which is seen actually, but when it is moving, and then it leaves footsteps, and footsteps could be heard. We could comprehend what idea does or wants to do in the far avenues of the beyond. Now, this all happens in the far avenues of the beyond. The hearing, seeing, it is not on this surface. It's not senses. These are the faculties. In the far avenues of the beyond, he heard the secret voice, the word that knows, and saw the secret face that is our own. Amazing. Note the word that knows in the Vedic idea of the word vak, representing the aspect of knowledge, and therefore the name, whereas the mind represents the aspect of power, and therefore the form. The Supreme's gaze looked out through human eyes and saw all things and creatures as itself, and knew all thought and word as its own voice. Supreme gazed. gaze, Supreme's gaze looked out through human eyes and saw all things and creatures as itself, and knew all thought and word as its own voice. Here, the culmination of all the faculties come together in manifestation from the beyond to this surface world. The realization of supramental consciousness, I'm writing here. Yasmin sarvani bhutani atman yevanupashyanti, in whom all the beings, in which Atman, in which self all the beings one sees, and all the beings in oneself, he is not shrinking from the world. He is not hiding, he is not running away, because his self is everywhere. He sees himself in all beings and all beings in himself. So this is very similar. Supreme's gaze looked out through human eyes and saw all things and creatures as itself, and knew all thought and word as its own voice. The voices that an inner listening hears conveyed to him their prophet utterances and flame-wrapped outbursts of the immortal word, and flashes of an occult revealing light approached him from the unreachable secrecy. Occult revealing light and flame-wrapped outbursts of the immortal word. The immortal word is associated with the Agni in a poetic way. Flame-wrapped outbursts of the immortal word from below, and flashes of an occult revealing light of the divine mind from above of Indra approached him from the plane where they are one, unreachable secrecy from his own depth. Kshetrada pashyam sanutascharantam sumad yutham na purusho bhamanam. This is from the Veda, a nearly identical passage. This was my research, what I was doing. So this flame and this light, flaming word, it's interesting. It's a Vedic expression, because the word is always aspiration, aspiration in the heart. That flame in the heart is the calling, is invocation. It is this hotar who invokes higher powers to come down. It is our psychic aspiration is the word. That's why the mother, who is in charge of the psychic, is the incarnate word. She actually brings that call to the Supreme. She brings him down here. She calls him down here. So to say, she goes there where all these human souls spread blissful for the blissful, as the Rig Veda says. And she brings down the Supreme, the Sun. He follows her as the young man follows the young woman, there where all his desires can be realized. So he rushes behind her. She calls him. She brings him down into this manifestation, the immortal word, actually. And interestingly enough, in the Rig Veda, Rik is rich. Yes, rich has meaning, two meanings of the flame, from here arka, the sun, and the word, the sound, the flaming word. Exactly that. It's also beautifully corresponding with mythical structure of Gapsarian vision, of the word seated within their heart. And Brihaspati, the Lord of the divine word is rising from the heart of man, from the ocean heart. So the word, wisdom, heart, everything is located within the heart. It's quite amazing. And the mind and seeing, everything is from above, as it were. Light which descends. Undying word poured into his heart as into an empty cup. Here I have several footnotes which I was writing today. Oh, there's so many things. Okay, let's go slow. A sudden messenger from the all-seeing tops traversed the soundless corridors of his mind, bringing her rhythmic sense of hidden things. Notice all the operations of consciousness are happening through the faculties. There is no way that we can even approach any functionality of consciousness without faculties. From all-seeing tops, soundless corridors of his mind, rhythmic sense of hidden things, all these are the faculties. And music spoke, transcending mortal speech, as if from a golden phial of the all bliss, a joy of light, a joy of sudden sight, a joy of light, a joy of sudden sight, a rapture of the thrilled, undying word poured into his heart as into an empty cup, a repetition of God's first delight. Dynamic word, creating in a young and virgin time. A descent of the word from above, as if the word of the divine is creating again within his heart, pouring itself into his heart as into an empty cup, and then repeating itself in rhythms within his heart, creating all again as if in a first movement of time, young and virgin time. Word heart relations. It's a constant thing throughout Savitri. Word and heart are very interesting, this relation. The mythical structure of consciousness of Gebser, of course, and the explanation by Sri Aurobindo that thoughts, words, thoughts in the form of the words are rising from the heart into the head. It is in Pavitra. Pavitra asks him, I notice, he says, that my thoughts are rising from the heart into my head. And he says, yes, it is so. They are rising from the heart into the head. Thoughts are of two kinds, and we have to look into it. This would be interesting for our psychological studies of integral yoga, and especially letters on yoga, of images and words. And that's again the form and the name. We are thinking in two formations, and also the feelings are there. Feelings are following both. So images, we can think in terms of images and in terms of the words. These two types of thoughts, and no more. And feelings follow up. Interesting. We are so limited in our mental capacity to think in terms of words and in terms of images, form and name.
I think Don has a comment there in the chat box, but might be easier for you just to mention it, Don.
Yeah, maybe I'll wait till there'll be a moment later. I'll wait till later.
Yes, original moment of consciousness is word, touch, vision. I spoke about this already, and we don't need to go. Sankhya. So we start with the word, then touch, then vision. Vision is the last. So to say, vibration expression of subjective consciousness is the word, self-expression of consciousness, shaping it into the form, the feeling, the formation of the vital sense, and then finally objectively manifesting it in the form, which can be objectively perceived as such, is seeing, basically. So, and the embodied movement is just the opposite. We start with the seeing the object, form objectively, and then we have a feeling of it, objectively, subjectively feel it, objective, subjective feeling, and then we understand it subjectively. We know what it is about and what it can do. So these are the footnotes. There are more things, but Dawn, go ahead. Because it's an endless list.
No, let me leave the chat. Leave the chat alone. I had a quick thing which I think ties a lot of this together for me, and it's very simple. You read the verse, "The Supreme's gaze looked out through human eyes and saw all things and creatures as itself." It reminded me, this is back in the early 1970s, I was about 23, and I kept reading Krishnamurti. And he would say, "Let there be no space between you and what you see." And I had no idea. I was struggling. One night I spent hours just imagining, do you get rid of the space? What does that mean? And suddenly I saw it. I saw that you're one with the object, but it's not you and the object. So I couldn't figure out how to say this until I read Krishna Prem has a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. And he has an appendix on consciousness, and he says the great problem with the word consciousness is we only think of it as passive. There's no active form, like to conscious something, which sounds, how can I conscious the world, right? So he came across this word, consire, which means to know together. And he said the divine is in a constant act, eternal act of consiring the universe and all universes. And last thing, in the chapter 13 of the Gita, which is the field to knower the field, he says, if we only think of consciousness as passive, we become, he does extraordinary, we transform the central fount of joyful, radiant light into a static absolute, an eternal futility thrown in the heart of being. And what he says is that at the supramental, the Mahat level, the supramental level, there is this gazing, but the gazing is not one thing to another. It's Sri Aurobindo describes the Upanishad as the divine sees in its own being and becomes what it sees. So when you're seeing the silence on the ship or you're seeing the vastness, if the sense of me seeing is let go, then you're participating in the divine seeing, divine knowing, divine hearing, where you don't lose Gita Shri or Radhe or Don or Vladimir, because they're still the eternal individual, but you are the ship and the person and the silence of the ocean all as one. And that is, to me, participating in that Supreme's gaze, looking out, there it is, Supreme's gaze looking out through human eyes, seeing all things and creatures as itself and knowing all thought and word as its own voice. And at that level, knowledge can't be an object. To me, that's what that.
Here we have, thank you for these, this is beautiful. With this seeing without space in between, Krishnamurti is a very good psychological treatment of how to really have that contact. Yeah, because space is the gap between two beings, between one being in two different forms in a way. And that gap is needed for the generation of more delightful interaction within the self, as it were, yeah? In different forms, in different focal points. It has a function, but it exists functionally. And if we understand that, we could really have that contact of direct knowing of any of seeing oneself in all selves and all selves in oneself. We could have had that. Of course, it's a great experience, and it will come one day. I'm sure about it. Thank you for these comments. There. I lost my other thought, but these are beautiful. There was some other thought, no, but that's okay. I think we are already over time. So I just wanted you to know something with this presentation. This is a kind of touching the surface or presenting the topic as it is, that consciousness is not, yes, that thought is coming back. Beingness, to remember to be your slogan, by the way, Dawn. To remember to be is only one faculty among three major. Being, hearing, and seeing. Seeing is apprehending, cognizing it as such, the being, and hearing is comprehending the being. Understanding what being can do, will do, wants to do, wants to be, what to become, wants not to become, all that within that comprehension. But being is a direct beingness in it. Yeah? So being with two major faculties is all we have, actually, on the spiritual level and on any other level. So remember to be conscious and comprehending, aware in every way. Not just be, remember to be, but remember to be conscious and blissful. We can add. So once we have this, we can see that Savitri is charged. There is no page where these faculties are not being exercised. There is no page in Savitri. Everywhere, because our consciousness functions like this. And so we can study our consciousness through Savitri, see how Sri Aurobindo is using it for himself, and learn from him how to use it, how to use the faculties. We can do it. It can be our study book. It's a bit ambitious project because nobody even dares even to read Savitri. Nobody wants to even try to understand it. And here we are examining it from the point of view of the faculties of consciousness. You see, we are kind of using it as the material for us to study ourselves, which is a bit ambitious and a bit maybe even non-spiritual in some way, because we do not approach Savitri as some kind of religiously, but we approach it spiritually. We want to learn from Savitri, yes, about ourselves. I don't think Sri Aurobindo would object to this approach, if it helps. Yeah.
Maybe you can unscreen share, Vladimir, just at the end here.
Yes, if you have some remarks, questions, there were many points here in the chat which I even didn't look into. Yeah.
Can you send the PDF by email, that document?
Right. Yes, sure. Yeah. So there are many points which we can look into and discuss. This was when I was doing Sri Aurobindo's Vedic imagery in Sri Aurobindo's Savitri. I had the research for 3 years, which was funded by Indian government, by the way. 3 years they were paying me, 5,000 rupees a month, but still. It was funded by Indian government. And it was published, by the way. The Vedic imaging in Sri Aurobindo Savitri was published and forgotten. It is somewhere in Savitri Bhavan, the big, huge book with 800 pages with all the imagery from Vedas in Savitri and how Sri Aurobindo used it. It is somewhere there. Copy is there. I don't have it even. Right. Thank you for these references. They are kind of very useful to use. All right. So was it useful at all, this kind of approach? Unexpected, maybe a bit.
Very useful. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Likewise, I found it extremely eye-opening. I've never thought of it from this perspective. So thank you, Vladimir. There's still way too many questions in my mind I cannot even articulate at this point. But I think it's a baby steps towards understanding.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you.
I agree with what was just said. I finally got through the Savitri a few months ago, and I'm beginning it again. And your level of analysis blows my mind, to be honest with you. But I very much appreciated what you had to share with us. It really brings a different level of understanding to the table.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your feedback. Yes, I think so. I think it becomes interesting. It becomes psychological. It becomes deeply subjective. We learn how we function, how our consciousness functions from Sri Aurobindo directly in the most beautiful language possible. And he's so precise. He would never use it imprecise psychologically. He chooses exactly as it is. So we can totally rely on his expertise. It's not some fancy, poetic, clustering together words for the sake of making impression. It's not this impressing. It's really to be precise in how consciousness functions. So we can really use it as the book of knowledge and learn about ourselves and our functionality. And this is only the beginning, of course. The whole Savitri is there waiting for us. And just check, open any page and put your finger and read the sentence, and you will find the functionality of consciousness. One of the faculties will be there functioning already. So one can see it immediately. All right, the same with Upanishads, actually, and that's where we took our intuition from. Great, I will close with mantra if you don't mind. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santo Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. See you then next time.
Thanks, Vladimir.
Thank you, Vladimir. Namaste.
Thank you.